webinar. Thank you all for taking some time today to join us and learn more about collaboration. Many of you know us here at Client Feedback Tool. We work with professional services firms to collect, manage, and respond to client feedback. And from time to time, we like to share some of the excellent things we found along the way. Darren Smith, who will be presenting today, is the founder and CEO of SEMA Strategic. He helps leaders in the design and construction industry figure out how excellent life could be if their teams work together with flawless execution. Darren is one of the smartest guys I've met, and he brings a unique approach to organizing teams for optimum results. He brings insights that are core to life, a real set of truths that are founded in how people operate. His insights are stunning. They're obvious once you see them in many cases, and I can honestly say I've probably learned more from Darren in the last year or two than I have from just about anybody else. I'm confident you'll share my excitement about the possibilities once you see what he has to share. At this point, I'm going to turn it over to, Darren, if you'll move the slide, one slide, a little bit of housekeeping here. Any of you who have the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar control panel blocking your view, you'll notice there is a double right arrow at the top of the screen. You can minimize your control panel and get it out of the way. Also, if the control panel is minimized, you'll see the arrows are pointing to the left. That's a great way to open that up. If you need to pose any questions along the way, you'll see there is a question dialog. Please, please, please take some time and ask your questions as we go. We may from time to time pause and answer any that are relevant. Any we don't get to, we will make sure Darren spends some time at the end and answers. If you're having a hard time seeing any of this, down at the bottom right corner of the GoToWebinar panel, you'll see a zoom, which allows you to zoom the window to make it larger or smaller so you can see most effectively. Again, if you have any questions along the way, please type them into the box. We'll make sure those get to Darren at the right time and get answers for you on those. At this point, Darren, please take it away.
Okay, thank you for that, Ryan. I'm real grateful for everybody that could make it today. And to frame this up nicely, if you will, the lovely Sally Orcutt is our technical analyst, if I can use a football term. She is making sure that everything goes, and thank you for that, Sally. Our master of ceremonies you've just heard from Ryan, and for today's purposes, I'm your play-by-play analyst or color analyst, and I'll be the presenter. And we'll go ahead and move right along after maybe sharing just a little bit of context with you as far as where I'm coming from, the set of lenses that I look through in regards to the industry and how collaboration fits into it. I work successfully with CEOs and business unit leaders that are between 40 and 50 years old in the construction industry. I help them realize or see or feel what it would be like if all their teams collaborated effectively. And you may be asking, well, collaborate to do what? To what end? And so, for example, in construction, it might be to, at this period of time in the industry especially, increase retention. It might be something I've seen is to increase innovation and spark some new ideas. My favorite that I've seen from folks out there in the industry around you is to realize a best project I ever worked on story experience every time instead of it being an island. So that's where I come from, and I'm a student of this topic, a subject matter expertise, or expert, I guess, to an extent, but I'm really big on learning, and I hope to learn from some of you possibly offline here today. I've also got some questions to maybe spark some chatter. So here we go. We're going to start off here with a quick survey, and Sally, I think, is manning that survey. And we're going to take about 20 seconds or so to give everybody a chance to answer this question. On your average project, evaluate the collaborative efforts of the team. So I'm talking about in your broad experience or limited experience, whatever your career has shown you to this point, would like to know how everybody feels. And after this poll, once we're into the slides, if there's any questions along the way, I'll be happy to answer them for you. I find it's better to ask the question when you think of it rather than waiting until the end. There will be a limited time at the end. I'll also take your follow-up questions via email because I know how it feels to miss the chance to get your question answered. That could have made a difference for you. My email address is Darren Smith, altogether, D-A-R-R-E-N like Nancy. I think everybody can take care of Smith, and that's at SEMAstrategic.com. C like Charlie, I, M like Mary, A, the word strategic.com. Also, if you know somebody, and here's the first chance to get engaged, if you know someone studying this topic, you have a story that's powerful to share, you have a tool that you know about, a statistic that makes a difference in people's minds and how they think about collaboration, or a way of measuring collaboration, please share it with me, and I'll share it with the Collaboration Academy community, which I'll talk about at the end.
Darren, did we lose your audio?
No, I was going to ask, do I need to punch something on this end to share the poll results?
They're showing on the screen right now, Darren. Are you able to see the results?
I'm not.
We're seeing 16% for exceeds expectations, or 0 for excellent, 16% at exceeds, 31% meets, 34% acceptable, and 19% needs improvement.
Okay, all right. So a broad range of responses, and the way that I look at that is there's opportunity there. I mean, I think we're all charged with doing the best we can, learning from the last one and doing the next one better, whether that's working inside the organization or that is working on a project team, for example. So keep that in the back of your mind as we go through this, and I think it will spark some ideas for you later. At least that's what I hope. Cooking up collaboration. So this topic for this hour is collaboration, which is both heart stuff and mind stuff. I'm going to share some of what I know about the heart stuff that you could implement in-house and on projects to collaborate effectively. In the case of heart stuff, we're going to talk about how to work together, not what we're going to work on. And what does this mean? The next slide answers this question, hopefully. This is data from a real collaborative project. They're using BIM, they're using Lean, they're doing things to measure collaboration behaviorally. And you can see here there's quite a number of responses. If you look under each category, you see the total number of responses. This is a large project, and I think a fair sampling, a fair example. The opportunity here, if you look at this closely, is knowing what behavior generated 27% of the responses, and then spreading what you find out around the organization like peanut butter, and doing more of it using a collaborative solution to do it. You'll see some of the tools used in a collaborative solution today. That's probably the long and short of this slide. I have to share a few rhetorical questions to help you visualize your story. So the first question here is, how did the team create an environment that promoted asking for help when needed? You've got this best project you ever worked on story, and this is a way to make it more vivid by thinking about these questions. If you can't think of a project or a situation in your organization now, this might spark an idea, thinking about these questions. So the second question, how well did the team create an environment that promoted offering of help even when not asked? The third question I have for you is, how well did team members integrate genuine acts of kindness into their interactions on the project? When I hear best project I ever worked on stories from folks in the industry, these things come up. These are what I would call best practices to look for to know if your project is really collaborative. There's more questions. Here's 3 good ones I'm sharing with you. Unfortunately, again, these tend to be isolated incidents. And my question to you is, how come every project can't be? And what can we do about it? So how are we going to do that? First, we're going to make some distinctions to add some tone and texture to our conversation around collaboration today. Second, we're going to create a common language so we can understand each other better. Third, we're going to look at one more part of a collaboration solution and how to quantify collaboration, to measure it, to collaborate effectively, to solve an identified problem. That's a mouthful. I hope everybody got that. We're going to begin by making some distinctions. You can collaborate more effectively if you define the 3 terms we're about to get into and the stories I'm going to share with you to bring it to life, hopefully for you, and figure out how to apply it, put some rubber to the road, if you will. Ground rules. Here are some examples when I say ground rules. Here's what you might experience out in the business world. I'll try being nicer if you'll try being smarter. Any connection between your reality and mine is purely coincidental. One more for you. Email is not to be used to pass on information or data. It should be used only for company business. I'm not being rude, you're just insignificant. Ground rules are about managing yourself. Following ground rules is doing the things behaviorally, and that's the key term here, behaviorally, that shouldn't have to be said or written down. They are basic behaviors you can ask someone to start or stop doing once, and that's all it should take. It clears your vision to focus on rules of engagement and increase accountability, and that's really where the gold is we try to do too much with collaboration, and the idea here is to simplify, and we have got to separate some things, and that's separating ground rules from rules of engagement is one of those separations that we have to make. Rules of engagement are about managing interactions with others. Ground rules is a basic idea, whereas rules of engagement is a step up because it involves others instead of just yourself. So instead of just managing yourself, you've now added 1 or more people to the mix, which, you know, complexity increases, right? Just like in projects or in organizations, if we've got too many goals, for example. So ground rules is a basic idea where rules of engagement is a step up because it involves others and it takes work and accountability. And I'm here to tell you that context matters. Today's focus is going to be on what I call rules of engagement. So put ground rules behind you now, and we're going to focus in on rules of engagement. I'm going to give an example of rules of engagement using 2 different scenarios, my family and a project team. So interesting enough, Project teams tend to mirror families. So in many ways, using the context of family can help project teams or organizations better understand of answering the call to collaborate. Rules of engagement. There's two parts. You've got operational rules. You've got relational rules. And we're going to make a distinction between those two and actually slice this even thinner, and we're going to talk about relational rules of engagement. I'm going to share a story with you. So operational rules of engagement. I work with teams, as I've talked about, to increase collaboration, and one way is through the use of rules of engagement. But you can't just tell a project team to collaborate more by suggesting they create rules of engagement. You have to show them how to create them, and I'm going to explain how. So let's distinguish between operational and relational. Operational rules of engagement, you change or win minds by how you interact with people. It's technology and processes. Relational rules of engagement, you win hearts. Now, I didn't say minds. You win hearts by how you make people feel when you interact with them. It's tone, language, and playing roles according to talents regardless of title. So let's focus on operational rules of engagement and share a story or so. Organizations are always looking for ways to systematize ideas or new ways of thinking. Well, one way to systematize the idea of being more collaborative is to move up and establish operational rules of engagement. These operational rules facilitate accountability for collaborating more through rewards and consequences for team members following the operational rules. I'm going to give an example using, again, a couple of scenarios. As I've mentioned before, project teams tend to mirror families. I'll use scenarios for my family and a project team. So at our house, at the Smith House, family operational rules of engagement include using manners. For example, my 4-year-old daughter, Carrie Ann, marched up to me recently and ordered a snack. And I turned to her with a sincere smile on my face and said in a supportive tone, "You usually have wonderful manners. Because you forgot them in this instance, you'll have to wait 5 minutes and come back." If she remembers, some of you know what I'm talking about, and ask me again correctly. The reason this operational rule of engagement works in our family is because there is accountability and there is an enforced reward and consequence. The reward for using manners, the desired behavior that we want in this case, it's what we want, right, as opposed to no manners, is receiving a snack now, and the consequence for not using manners, which that's the undesired behavior. If you think about it in your organization or a project, you've got desired behaviors and undesired behaviors also. You know, you want the desired behaviors, and it's a matter of how do you draw those out. Okay, so the consequence for not using manners, the undesired behavior, is no snack and waiting an additional 5 painful minutes, which is an eternity for a 4-year-old. So hold on, you may be thinking, this sounds like a relational rule of engagement or winning hearts. I don't understand. Well, you have to, hopefully I can give some evidence, but you may have to trust me on this. It's not. To prove this point, let's take the distinction between the two types of rules of engagement, take that further. Manners are operational. They help us mechanically get through life a little easier, but using manners doesn't mean our heart has to change. So back to operational rules of engagement. In an organization like a family, you can establish operational rules of engagement to facilitate accountability for collaborating more through the use of rewards and consequences. Let's say a team member owning a particular issue adds the issue to the next meeting's agenda in your organization or maybe your weekly project team meeting. But the team fails to provide, or the team member fails to provide background information a few days before the meeting for others to study and doesn't specify what action. You know, are you looking for a discussion on this, decision from the team, advising? What is it that they want on the issue, that they want on the agenda? As a result, during the meeting, when the owner of the issue asks for a decision, this could create a feeling of a sneak attack. I don't know if anybody's ever felt that before on some members of the team. So what if the organization established an operational rule of engagement involving the decision-making process? In the same example I just mentioned, the team member owning a particular issue confers with other owners of the issue, subject matter experts, those impacted by it before earning the right to add the issue to the team's next meeting agenda. Basically, thinking about others. Further, a few days before the meeting, the owner of the issue distributes needed background information to the team so they can study it and make a requested decision on the issue. The team discusses the issue for up to 30 minutes and uses the GEMO approach. GEMO is G-E-M-O, and it stands for Good Enough, Move On, as the standard for managing discussion time at the meeting on issues before making a decision. So in this example, where's the accountability? The accountability is following the decision-making process, and the reward is earning the right to add an item to the agenda as well as some trust. Remember, they went back and checked with everybody, thinking about others. So they earned some trust from the impacted team members that influenced the decision. The consequences, on the flip side, of not following the process are the delay of the issue being added to the agenda and the extra work needed to rebuild trust with impacted team members. Not only does there need to be a reward for the desired behavior and a consequence for the undesired behavior, but also the differential between the two needs to be big enough to make the desired behavior decidedly more attractive. In other words, it's got to hurt. There's got to be some sort of pain and a lot of separation between the pain for the undesired behavior and the reward, the reinforcement for that desired behavior. One little nugget to share with you, you may want to write this down. A stated goal of collaborating more. By the way, for you engineers out there, this is a math equation. A stated goal of collaborating more plus the addition of new habits, doing something different, like we're talking about here, or something that you're doing that's different, plus accountability through rewards for new habits, plus consequences for old ones that produce negative results, equals achievement of the goal of collaborating effectively. In an organization, there's several types of operational rules of engagement you can use to establish a collaborative culture. They're all around you right now. So a couple of the big ones, for example, you could use technology to interact with team members virtually, such as building information modeling or BIM software in the design and construction of buildings, all the way through operations and maintenance. Actually, there's obviously all kinds of software options out there. Another operational rule could be incorporating lean principles from Toyota to improve work processes. So that takes care of operational rules of engagement. We're going to flip over now to relational rules of engagement. I don't know if you've ever experienced a major construction project on your home. I've heard many war stories, I'm sure you have, and the term war story is usually appropriate. And why? Because relationships tend to suffer, and in turn, so does the project budget, schedule, and quality. Well, how about this for a story? My wife, Sally, and I are working on an integrated, or working with an integrated design builder residentially, who are also husband and wife, to add on to our house. In addition, and this is no pun intended, again, we're talking about, okay, you get it. The husband and wife team are friends of ours. And wait, there's more. Sally and I plan on living in our house with our 5 children during this 4 to 6 month construction. Sounds great, huh? The plan, spend time on how we will work together before how will we do the work. This is key. I mentioned this at the beginning. You may want to write that down. If we spent more time on how we will work together and less on, or at least, let's just say, just spend more time on how we will work together, there is no overspending or overinvestment in that. It will come back to you. And that's what we're talking about here with collaboration and working on behavior. So how are we going to do this on this home edition? The whole project team spent time at the beginning before the first drawing was ever made creating relational rules of engagement. In this case, the project team is Mark the architect, Selena the builder, Sally the owner, that's my wife, and Darren the consultant, that's me. I'm also the director of maintenance and operations after completion of this project, by the way. How do you define relational rules of engagement? It is knowledge of how you can make other people feel that have to interact or work with you. It's tone, it's language, and playing roles according to talents for the good of the team and the project, regardless of title. How do you create these rules? To answer the question best, I use one of my family's favorite television shows. It's called Chopped. If you have cable or seen this on vacation when you're flipping through, it is on the Food Network, and Chopped is a cooking war pitting 4 accomplished chefs against each other. The battle weapons, quote unquote, are an assortment of food ingredients in closed baskets that remain unknown until the first battle begins. The battles are won or lost based on whether the chefs create a satisfying dish with their surprise food ingredients. In relational rules of engagement for project teams, it's similar. And I'm saying project teams, but of course this applies to organizations. It's understanding or assessing what talents or ingredients your team has in its basket and working with those talents to create a satisfying project experience or dish. There are many team assessments out there. The assessment I prefer helps you understand how people get work done by learning what their talents are. While this assessment is called Strength Finders, more accurately, it is a talent assessment. Talents are raw abilities that everyone has. Talents are things you do almost perfectly every time with little or no effort. They energize you. That's the distinguishing feature of a talent. As you learn more about them and practice them, talents become strengths. There is no free lunch, folks. You learn and you practice, and again, another math equation, it turns into a strength. They call it Strength Finders. Personally, my opinion is because it sells more books than if they called it Talent Finders. Nonetheless, it really resonates well in this industry, and it's something to consider. So using the talent assessment, there are ingredients for every project team, and it's something that I'll just kind of talk about. If we were looking at a chart, I could see the top 5 talents of each project team member, Mark, Selena, Sally, and Darren. And I would use these talents the project team has to create the relational rules of engagement. I want people to play the roles they're best suited for. So they do bring title for operational reasons, only when needed, and some people do bring subject matter expertise, and that's needed. If you're going to be on an apartment project, multifamily project, the owner probably wants to know if you've done this before. So I get all that. I think the third leg on this stool to help collaborate effectively, though, is recognizing talents, and that's one way of creating relational rules of engagement, is using the talents and letting people, after we get subject matter expertise taken care of and a certain amount of operational leadership, is you fill in the rest of the team with the talents that you need for that project to be successful. So, for example, I'll read off a few points to you. We have a lot of internal dialogue on this team and internal motivation talents, which are highlighted in, on this visual, if you can just picture it in your mind. And this indicates that our team has a tendency to think about decisions themselves and do it themselves as a leadership style. We have to remember to tell each other what we are thinking. Otherwise, we're just going to have these conversations in our heads. And also, we're going to have a tendency to make decisions or not make decisions as a team unless somebody brings it to our attention. So we need to know that about ourselves. I'm sure that our project team is going to have its share of lemons to deal with, but since we've taken the time to know what ingredients we have and created relational rules of engagement with them and how best to use them, we'll be able to make the budget and quality aspects of the project taste like satisfying lemonade. That's my hope. I do realize that nothing is perfect, but I know that we're going to make lemonade, and it's just a matter of how sweet is it going to be. The only thing left to be chopped in this particular example I'm sharing with you is the length of the schedule. I'm going to be more vivid about that example when we get down to using one of the tools, and hopefully it'll pull it together. So, talking about this all again, we've got rules of engagement, operational and relational, and you've got to have both, and that's what's really important here. If you've got one and not the other, you're jumping around on one leg like being a one-legged grape stomper, or you've got one hand tied behind your back, in my opinion. So let's talk about how you create relational rules of engagement. All right. We've mentioned this first idea. The second one we're about to jump into is creating a common language so we can understand each other. We've just made the distinctions. Now we're going to create a common language, and here's how we'll do it. What is this thing? This is the collaboration gauge, and I thought about this in jury duty. And so I'm going to share a little story with you, and this is for a reason, so hang with me if you will. I don't know about you, but in Dallas County, they call about 500 people down a day to be in a big room together, and they start drawing names and assign groups of 50 people to courtrooms. And I was lucky enough to get picked, and I didn't mind it at all. I want good people. Hopefully, I would be included in that are in that jury box should I ever need them. So hopefully that's never going to be the case. Nonetheless, when the 50 of us got into this courtroom, the attorneys trot out and they say, hey, we've got to define one term for you, and you're never going to look at the term burden of proof the same ever again. There's many types of burden of proof that you can use to decide a court case. The first one is suspicion. And in this particular case, Ryan, you were in the wrong place at the wrong time. That would be an example of suspicion. Moving up the scale in terms of, I would say, sophistication, I'll jump up to what's called preponderance of evidence. And do you know that if a case is decided by preponderance of evidence, only 51% of the evidence has to be in your favor in order to win the decision? Let's move up the ladder again to beyond a reasonable doubt. That is 99% certainty. So in burden of proof, there's a lot of room for stuff to happen. And I map that over to collaboration. With collaboration, there's a lot of stuff that can happen. So we've got to get a common language because everybody's got their idea in their head on what collaboration is, and the collaboration gauge helps us. And if you can see this well enough, I know that the print is a little bit small. And by the way, I'd be happy to send this PDF to you. All you got to do is ask. The question here is, using these definitions, this gauge, where does your last project rate on this gauge? Or where does your average project rate? The difference between where you rate your projects and collaboration creates a quick gap analysis. Where we're at, let's just say coordination, which is what general contractors are supposed to do, right? And maybe you just want to get to cooperation. Well, now you've got some talking to do. You've created a discussion. You've created permission to open people's minds to have this discussion and go down this collaboration road. And I think a lot of times it's an icebreaker because a lot of people are resistant to talking about this. They think they already know everything about this. So you figure out, what is it going to take to close that knowing, doing gap? I know we're at coordination. I know what it takes to do to reach cooperation. There are these actions that would close the gap, but I just have to do it. This helps you do that and also keep your eyes on the prize. So now that we have a common language and we know where we're at and where we want to go, we can make a plan and take action to move us down the road in this collaboration journey. All right, so hopefully everybody can see this well enough. This is something called a relationship placemat, and I came up with this from a colleague. So my colleague was one of 9 kids, and he said the biggest thing that he remembers from his childhood, and his father specifically, was they ate dinner together almost every night. And they were from pretty humble means, and his father would make placemats out of butcher paper. And he would write things on them like Ben Franklin's top 10 quotes, or their family mission statement, or a prayer that resonated with them, or some goals that each one of them had. And that would create meaningful conversation. I don't know about you, but if you've either been a kid, had kids, or been around kids, hey, Sarah, how was school today? Fine. Would you like to elaborate on that, please? Oh, it was good. It's hard to create conversation around the dinner table. It's the same way around the meeting table. We need conversation. Conversation gives us hope. If people are talking, there's a chance. And so, for example, when we're talking about relational rules of engagement, we need to know what's going on about why certain people make us feel a certain way when we have to work with them. For example, if you look at Mrs. Peacock, she's in the bottom left corner of this business, the placemat we would use at the meeting table for a team or for an organization. And she has strategic. Strategic as a talent. So these are top 5 talents of each person, by the way, just to tie it back to what we talked about earlier. And they process lightning fast, and they already know the answer to a problem before most people even get halfway through thinking about it. Let's go. The answer is obvious. Let's go. And then you now compare or contrast that with Colonel Mustard. He's in the bottom right. He has context. Colonel Mustard needs to know how we got to where we are now. What is the history on this issue before Colonel Mustard can go forward in his mind and make a decision. So you can imagine the opportunity or the challenge this may cause between these 2 team members, Mrs. Peacock and Colonel Mustard. But knowing that's going on, it helps you turn lemon into lemonade. It actually helps you turn something that maybe used to frustrate you, give you anxiety, make you sad, I don't know, but create an emotion, helps you actually turn it into a positive and proactively leverage it. It is a game changer for dynamics. And that's what we're talking about with relational rules of engagement. And you may be thinking, you know, I don't really have time for this. Well, if you're in an organization, hopefully for a long time, or a project team for a couple of years, I have a hard time believing that this wouldn't matter. Here is the back of this relationship placemat, and I'll just point out one thing. The national database average for a team that has the learner talent is 25, 26, 27%. And this particular team has 75% of them have learners. So what that tells us off the bat is this team potentially could circle a decision for weeks without ever making one. So knowing that about ourselves up front, we can put some boundaries in place, some relational rules. Look, we know what we are. We're not going to change what we are, but we are going to soften the stripes on this zebra. And so what we're going to do is we're going to put a boundary of 30 minutes of discussion. Doesn't always have to be like that, but we're going to put that boundary in place, and 80% of the time we're going to make a decision after 30 minutes. So that would be a real quick example of second example of creating relational rules of engagement by knowing what we are. Okay, a couple of neat images. We often discuss building production systems and often confuse collaborative teams with a well-oiled machine. In reality, relationships are complex, often messy. No one fits perfectly with the pieces and parts around them. A truly collaborative team operates much more like a well-cultivated English garden that you see on the right. Everything has its place, and each part plays off of the other parts. But there is little control, and I have that capitalized in your mind, C-O-N-T-R-O-L, right? Yeah. Few hard boundaries. Each member of the garden finds its place organically, often unpredictably, but beautifully. It's a beautiful mess. And if we'll pay attention to thinking like a gardener instead of a technician operating that machine on the left, we're much better off. That's what we're talking about today. Measurement systems tend to focus on precision. Like a machine, they're mostly pass-fail systems. We can't treat team members like that. Measuring collaborative efforts instead should focus on an organic or analog granularity like a garden. Collaboration isn't about pass-fail. It's about did you or didn't you. Collaboration relies on understanding expectations in the human interactions and the handoffs. This is probably the best place to work with this, is to identify the most painful handoff. That's where I would laser beam in on if you've got to pick a spot. So you've got to, why this collaboration stuff? What problem is it going to solve? And then you may even have to get more granular down to where are we going to try this? Where are we going to focus? Because it's about making this as simple as possible when you first start, not trying to do everything, trying to do one thing and earning permission to expand collaboration. And a good place is to pick a handoff point. So talking about handoffs a little bit further, celebrating where effective conversations blossom, the measurement system should then bring these to light, publish the results for the team to use, and encourage human-to-human conversation within the groups. So we were just, what I just talked about there was creating a measurement system that doesn't focus on failure, but on what are we going to do. Truly collaborative teams rely on discovering successes. So let's go ahead and go on. So what we have here is a way to visualize and pick spots for success. I discovered Client Feedback Tool looking for a quantitative way to measure collaboration. Up to last year, I only had qualitative ways to measure. For example, anecdotes, stories. This creates numbers, and I get it, and I know that we need it. We need numbers to more easily wrap our heads around, are we moving the needle or not? And there's several gauges that are available to identify as a team where collaborative efforts are succeeding and where additional efforts are needed. The magic here is that we can just pick what's working really well and what's setting our hair on fire. Let's don't worry about the middle. So in this particular case, I would be looking at responsiveness. What's going well there that we can spread around like peanut butter, or budget? There's probably one or two conversations that we can have that would help us nip whatever budget issue is going on. What I like about this and what's different from SurveyMonkey or some of the other things I know that are out there is, by the way people are measuring is great. If they're doing something, it's great. It's better than not measuring, which is where we were before, and in a lot of cases still are. But the next level up, the way to move up, to keep raising the bar, is to use something, in my opinion, like I'm using here. There's a specific template to use to measure quantitatively collaboration. I like it because it's non-anonymous. They've got scads of data over 10 years that say that you get many times more the response rate when it's named feedback, and you get many more times the written feedback, which is gold. It helps you act. I mean, I've got somebody that's got a project, it's a healthcare project, and they're beating their chest all proud that they were averaging a 4 on a scale of 0 to 5 using SurveyMonkey. And my question back to him was simply, okay, so what are you going to do with that? And the answer was, I don't know, but boy, it feels good. Again, that's fine. At least they know where they're at. They know that their project's not in big trouble. But what are you going to do to raise the bar? I mean, everybody's getting better every day. Other nuances here is it separates person from behavior. That's a key term here. Is that before, SurveyMonkeys, a lot of it's about project, team member performance, or their work product, judging that. We're not judging somebody or their work product. We are measuring behavior, how they make other people feel that have to work with them. So when you're only talking about behavior, it creates even more safety for people to answer honestly. I could give you 3 or 4 or 5 more nuances, but we're going to go ahead and keep moving here. You can spotlight. In this next slide, you can spotlight where you need to have the conversations and keep things high protein and keep them lean. Only do what is going to be helpful to produce a rapid result and no more. You can tell where the issue really is by wiring things up like you see here. You can keep and monitor everything. And the thing that's great about this is that you don't have to wait till you get to the end of the project or the end of a calendar year. You can know real time where the opportunities are, where good things are happening, or where you need to nip something. And you can only go to the people that need to be involved in the conversation. Going back to the collaboration gauge creates conversations. Client feedback tool and the way that we're using it to measure collaboration quantitatively, it creates conversations. That's the only way that we can move up. Here are some ideas. Won't go into this maybe too deeply. You can read these things. I've kind of touched on it just a bit. This is visual. Things start at a scale of 1 to 7. It starts at a 4, and the moment that that slider is moved, which is what they use instead of a radio dial, for example, it creates a conversation. These are response points. You know where the opportunities are. You can read this for yourself, so I'm not going to talk too much about it. So we talked about that relationship placemat for creating rules of engagement. We've also talked about how do you measure that, so another way to get into collaboration as far as having a plan, right? Both of these tools and corresponding metrics create conversations. So conversations are the means to collaborate relationally and proactively and make the X factor in all projects, which are the people, more predictable by removing the chance for surprises. We know we need to do this. These tools that these last 2 tools that we've just looked at help us do it. It helps us close that knowing-doing gap. Accountability through metrics or /evidence helps you form new habits. It helps you keep people accountable. What else can I say about this? So collaboration to what end? One statistic I'll throw out there to you. There's, it's $1 trillion industry. At least it was in 2007. Design and construction. The industry's own data says that there is $400 billion of waste. So 40 cents of every dollar, and I'm shooting low because I've seen figures as high as 50%. So that's waste. 10% is materials. The rest is behaviorally generated. So that means 40 billion for materials minus, or take away from 400 billion leaves $360 billion of behaviorally generated waste. And if we reduce ramp-up time, for example, from 6 months to 6 weeks, you can put a dollar figure to that. We don't have to be that successful to make a big difference and recapture some of that $360 billion. Just to recap, we've talked about ground rules, rules of engagement, and specific operational relational, making the distinction there. And we've also just really drilled down on relational rules of engagement and kind of how you would get going down that path. So my challenge to you is to do what you fear most. People tend to fear what we've just talked about here today. And I just want to encourage you to step out there. I mean, life is short. Do something. Even if it's just on the operational side, that's taking a step forward. So I'm going to stop there, probably, Sally, right?
Yeah, thank you so much, Darren. This is Ryan jumping back in. I appreciate you sharing that with us. Sally, any questions that have come in along the way? Do you want to pose those to Darren so he can begin going down? And then any of the rest of you who would like to, please take a minute and type in your questions in the question log, and we'll make sure those get to Darren. And if we don't have time today to answer the questions, we can prepare responses and get them back to you via email later on.
Terrific. Yeah, Darren, question. How do you come up with the list of problems or situations that might be solved using collaboration?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm glad somebody asked that. One answer is, how are you being measured? If you're the CEO or a business unit leader, what are the key performance indicators that you and your organization is being measured on? Maybe by the board, or in the case of a business unit leader, their boss. And so what does that look like? I know, for example, I'll give you a healthcare example. Healthcare example, with the way Obamacare is working now, there is 1 to 3% of a hospital's reimbursement is based on their patient quality of care scores. And they can earn more or earn less of up to 3% of their reimbursement. And there's razor-thin margins in healthcare, so that can mean the difference between profit and loss for them. So why should we work on collaborating effectively? We want to raise our patient quality of care scores. That's how they get reviewed, and that's part of how they get paid. On the construction side, an example I'll just stick with that I used earlier would be realizing a best project I ever worked on story every time. It's really something that I think is attainable. I wouldn't even consider it a BHAG or a big hairy goal. So hopefully that answers that question, Sally.
Great. So I have another question here. The question, are there some great examples of key performance indicators behaviorally that people could use?
Could you repeat that one more time, please?
Sure. Are there some great examples of key performance indicators behaviorally? So I guess behavioral key performance indicators.
Behavioral let me make sure I'm going to understand. Hopefully I understand this question well enough. If I do, could you read that one more time?
Yeah. I'll read it exactly as it's written. Are there some great examples of key performance indicators, and then it's like ... behaviorally. So I hope I'm getting it correctly as it's being asked.
Okay. So behaviorally, what I would look for, as I think I understand this, is looking for new habits. You know, in God we trust, everybody else show me your data. I think that's something that we have to look for. And I go back to those questions, behavioral ways to notice or observe. And that would be, do you see random acts of kindness on the project? Maybe that comes up in a project meeting. We ask for, has anybody seen one of those this week? So hopefully that answers the question. You know, the other one is around the culture is that do people offer? You may even you're not trying to count everyone, but look for evidence of, are people offering to help even without being asked? So those are behavioral artifacts that you can look for, and you just need to measure whether they're happening or not how many. Hopefully that helps.
Darren, thanks a lot for that. As we're wrapping up here, I know there's a couple other questions. Several have asked for your contact information, so we'll make sure that gets out to everyone. Any other questions along the way, please either route through us at Client Feedback Tool or feel free to send directly to Darren. That's Darren Smith at cmastrategic.com. Please look for a survey from us. We do very much value your feedback. I know Darren wants it as well. We take feedback very seriously around here, and any of those of you who do respond, you can expect a personal response from us in response to your feedback so we can keep the conversation going. I also know Darren has some exciting research going on with what metrics matter in the collaborative world, and he's doing some research at the national level on that. So Darren, perhaps you can send a message to the group with more information about your collaboration research and some of those key performance indicators that you were just talking about. So again, thank you all for taking time. We appreciate you sticking with us. We will make a recording of this available to all of you. So do look for some follow-up from us with a feedback request, some information from Darren on some of this collaboration research he's doing, and a link to this webinar. If you know anyone who would benefit from or would value this information, please feel free to share that around. Again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.